The best way to visualize energy flow through a food chain in a community, including, of course, gross production or assimilation, net production or biomass, and respiration, is to actually visualize this energy flowing through a trout stream, such as the one we're filming next to today. Because as you see the water move, flowing downstream, you can think of this basically as energy flowing through this particular habitat. Now let's pick one trophic level within this trout stream, and let's use the secondary consumers, the trout themselves, as an example of the flow through their trophic level of energy. Now remember that assimilation is what these trout consume. Actually, the invertebrates, the mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies that are flowing into their trophic level, and what they actually eat. That's their assimilation, their gross production. Their net production is what they express as weight or as biomass. You could go in here with electrofishing gear, collect trout, get weights and lengths, and find out exactly, based on the amount of food available, what they actually expressed as biomass or weight. The difference between what they assimilated, PG, and what they expressed as biomass, or PN, is respiration. And as we mentioned before, this includes excretion or death or actual release of CO2, carbon dioxide, from the trout within this particular food chain that we're working with. Another concept that you really need this kind of a flow-through habitat to visualize, to understand, is the concept of energy intake. Energy intake, or EI, is the total amount of energy that's available, and of course remember in our case we're talking about food energy, the total amount of energy that's available to any particular trophic level within our food chain. Now in this particular case, of course, working with this habitat and working with those secondary consumers, the trout, the energy intake for that secondary consumer level is all of the energy that, if they were 100% efficient, they could maximize or assimilate. Now in this particular case with a flowing stream, we know that all of the energy that is available to them, they don't assimilate. Flowing water, the drift of the invertebrates such as maize, stones, and caddisflies, are commonly drift at night. Now what they mean by drift is they release themselves from the substrate, the rocks they're attached to, actually float up in the water and drift downstream. Most invertebrate zoologists feel they do this to look for other sources of food. Well, since a lot of the trout don't feed at night, browns do, but the other types are not nocturnal feeders, these organisms drift out of their particular habitat so that they're not available to assimilate. However, they are part of what could be available to the trophic level, to our trout, if they were 100% efficient. In other words, that's energy intake for that trophic level. Now, energy intake is always going to be a great deal more than the actual P sub G or assimilation. And we have to know, if we're doing an energetic study, what kind of efficiencies, in our case, these trout have at assimilating the total amount of food available to them. Well, we have efficiencies that we can determine, that we can calculate, to find out how efficient all organisms are in food chains, including, of course, our trout that we're working with today. One of the efficiencies involves energy intake. This is an efficiency within the trophic level, our secondary consumers, and it's called assimilation efficiency. Now in this particular case, what we're calculating is the assimilation, or what they actually consumed, P sub G, divided by the energy intake, or how much energy was totally available to the community. Well, if we have a value of assimilation, let's say of 100 kilocalories, and we have an energy intake of 500 kilocalories for that particular trophic level, then it's 100 divided by 500, or in this particular case, their assimilation efficiency would be 20%. Now this will vary from trophic level to trophic level. And in fact, efficiencies are usually a little higher in the higher trophic levels than there is for primary producers or primary consumers. That is the lower trophic level. That's one example of an efficiency, assimilation efficiency. A second type of efficiency we could talk about would be tissue growth efficiency. And again, let's work with our brook trout. Tissue growth efficiency really gives you a good indication of how efficient the trout are at converting what they eat into biomass. Now, obviously, if you're managing animal or fish populations to get the maximum amount of biomass for the food they consume, for example, if you're raising cattle, you want them to convert most of the food they consume into biomass or weight or meat, because that's how you're making money. In the case of trout, we want to see how efficient they are at converting the invertebrates, the maize, stones, caduces, whatever that they're consuming, into actual weight. This is tissue growth efficiency, and it's P sub n, that is the net production, divided by P sub g, or the assimilation. In our particular case, as an example, using that 100 kilocalories as the P sub g, let's say they convert, or actually fix as biomass, 50 kilocalories of that 100 kilocalories. Well, in this particular case, then, their tissue growth efficiency would be 50 divided by 100, or their tissue growth efficiency would be 50%, which would be actually quite good. Those are two examples of efficiencies within trophic levels. We also can calculate efficiencies between trophic levels. And as one example, let's use assimilation efficiency between trophic levels. Now, in this particular case, it would be P sub g, if that's our trout, what they assimilated, divided by P sub g, or assimilation, T minus 1. Now, the T refers to trophic level. Minus 1 means the previous trophic level, the one just before it. In this particular case, that would be our stones, maize, caduces, etc. So P sub gt divided by P sub gt minus 1 shows us the efficiency and assimilation between those two trophic levels, the primary consumers and the secondary consumers.